Okay, hello everyone. So what we're going to do today, or at least with this video, is we're going to finish up the list of basic MS-264 graphs for univariate variables with our final data type, which is uh, ratio and interval data that is continuous or near continuous. And that graph that we're going to create is a histogram, and we're going to cover how to do that and then put that information into Flourish going forward. So let me go through and share with you the data that we have. And let's see here. There we go. So this is just the spreadsheet of the data that we've been working with for all of our examples here. So it was that questionnaire from the original day of class. The data we used in class was where we asked in the questionnaire, how many students were in your high school? Okay, so this is we're going to do a graph that is about ratio and interval data that's theoretically continuous. And as we think about students, students aren't continuous, but it is discrete. But you notice as you scroll down, none of these numbers are like duplicating particularly frequently. And if we were to go through, we would have several hundred different unique values. And so what we have to do when we have data like this, or data that is truly continuous, is that we no longer count up how many times individual instances happen. So we don't count up how many times like 1248 occurred in the data set. What we have to do is we have to create ranges. And then once we create those ranges, we count up how many observations fall in within those ranges. And then we can start treating things like we had before. Now, when we were working with nominal and ordinal data, we made lots of use of the pivot table functionality. Pivot table is not going to work here. So pivot tables don't work by counting ranges. So we're going to have to use something different. And I'm going to start off by copying column H. So let's see here, copy column H. I'm going to insert a new page. I'm doing this because I don't want to mess up the original data sheet. So, okay, so there we have how many students are in your high school. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create ranges. Then we're going to create a bins array, which tells us what's the maximum value of that array, of that range. And then we're going to go through and use an array function to do the counting for us. All right, so the first thing I need to do, and remember, you've got to go through and make sure that if you don't already know what your max and min is for your data set, you probably should go through and use the max and min function, figure out what's the smallest value, what's the biggest value, because your ranges are going to need to contain all those values. So I'm going to go ahead and start, and I know that there's we're going to start off with 0 to 500 students. So we know that there's no one less than 0 in a high school. We have a few ones from students who have been homeschooled. So we've got the ones contained in our smallest category. Then we're going to go 501 to 1000. Then we're going to go 1001 to 1500, 1501 to 2000. Then we're going to go up 2001 to 2500. Then let's say 2501 to 3000. Now I'm going to start, well, let me do one more. So 3500. And remember, 3501 to, actually it's 3001 to 3500. Then 3501 to 4000. Okay. And then I know that the biggest number in my data set last time I looked was like 6,000 or 7,000. So I'm going to make sure that this I don't want to keep going in 500s because the data becomes really scarce. So I'm going to create this one catch-all range that goes 4001 to 8,000, and that'll catch everybody that I have. So that's our range. Now, the next thing I need to do is indicate a bins value. Now, what a bins value is going to be used by the function that we're about to create in a minute or two. But essentially what the bins tells us, tells Excel, is what is the biggest value in each of these. So the biggest value for this first one is 500. Then the biggest value for the next one is 1,000. And all of a sudden, Excel's starting to do some thinking. And this is one of those rare occasions that Excel is actually thinking about the right thing. That it's recognized that I have a set of ranges in the next column. So what if we just auto select or auto suggest these? And I'll just hit return because that's exactly what I want to do. All right. Now I need to go through and do the counting. And this is where for our other graphs, we went through and used a pivot table. Well, there's no pivot table that's going to help us out here. We need to go through and access a new type of Excel function called an array function. There's a handful of them, and generally they're used to do linear algebra type calculations where you're manipulating matrices and things like that. But what we're going to use it because it allows us to count how many observations fall within certain ranges, or there is a specific array function that does it for us. Now, as you use an array function, what you're going to do is you're going to highlight all the cells where you want that array function. So for us, that is H5 through H13. That in each of these bins, we want to count up how many respondents fall into each of these ranges. So once I've got everything selected, now I'm going to start typing in my function. I'm going to type in equals at frequency because that is the function we're going to use, frequency. Then we're going to open our parentheses. Now it wants to know the data array. Where is the data? Where are we looking for all these observations? Well, that's going to be A2 through, and we'll just kind of keep scrolling until we have everything. I think it's like around 1,400 anymore. Okay, so it's in column A2 through A1470. So that's where it's going to look for the observations to start counting. Now the next thing is I need to put a comma, and now it wants to know where the bins array is. How do I break up when I count all these? Well, that's what the bins array that we created over here in column G is for. Okay, so I've got the bins array now identified. Now don't get ahead of me here because there's probably some keystrokes you've never done on a computer before, or at least not in Excel. First thing, close the parentheses. Don't do anything else, just close the parentheses. Now, if you're on a PC, you're going to hit these following three keystrokes. Hit one, keep it pressed. Hit the second, keep it pressed. Hit the third, keep it pressed. And once they're all pressed, you let go, and magic is going to occur. If you're on an Apple, just be patient. So I'm going to hit Control, Shift, Enter, and boom, magic occurred. What it did is it went through column A, counted up how many times it saw a number that ranged from 0 to 500, and apparently that number happened 275 times. Likewise, all the way down to the bottom, it looked through column A and discovered that there were 70 students who went to high schools that ranged from 4,001 students to 8,000. Okay, now, I haven't forgotten about you if you have an Apple. With recent system upgrades with Apple, this might be really simple for you. You just hit return. Okay. Now, if that didn't quite work out for you, you may need to Google what to do with an array function in Apple. Under previous operating systems, there was a distinct keystroke sequence, but recently it's in class, it's just been working. People hit return and boom, there it is. All right. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to create a sum. I want to count up how many data points I had. So I'm going to type equals SUM and then just add up all these bad boys. Okay, so we had 1,467. And if you recall on the other graphs, we've been doing a relative frequency. Let's do that too. We need a relative frequency here. Okay. And relative frequency, we're just going to hit equal, point to the cell with 275 in it, divide by our total frequency here at the bottom, H15. And we're also going to remember that we want that to be an absolute reference. So we've got the relative reference divided by the absolute reference, hit return. And then let's format this as a percent, add a decimal, drag this down. Boom. We've got our relative frequency table. This can be cleaned up and dropped into your group project. That's super awesome. Just basically bolden the top of the table. Now we need to put this into a graph. We're going to be using Flourish for that. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. So copy this block of cells, copy, ta-da. It's everything selected. Now I'm going, so it's in our clipboard. I'm going to hit stop share. And now I'm going to share something different. And I'm going to share, let's see here, share my web browser that I conveniently have open to Flourish. Okay, so now I'm going to hit new visualization. All right. Now we have to find where histogram is on this. And it turns out it's one of the it's built on the line bar and charts platform, but you don't see it initially. You have to go down to where it says show more. Ta-da. And then it has a pre-programmed histogram chart that's all ready to go. We can click on that. And here we have apparently shoe sizes. And this is actually the graph this would be a graph you would use if you had truly discrete ratio data or interval data too. But we're going to drop our data in. So hit where it says the data tab up here, hit that. Let's clear the sheet. Let's go to cell A1 and paste in our data. All right. So now we need to go through and make sure that the Flourish is pointing to the correct data that we want plotted. Our labels are pink, and they're identified as column A, and that is absolutely correct. Now we have bins really gets back to what the ranges are. We don't want to have bins identified as one of our values. Likewise, we've been producing all of our charts based off of the relative frequency. So right now it's identifying B and C. We just really kind of want it just to be D. All right, so once we have that, I'm going to click on this gray bar. Okay, gives me a little preview of what I got down here. And then I'm going to hit the big preview button. And there's our graph. Pretty good shape. We need to do a few additional things. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to close chart type. And then I'm going to scroll down to, let's see, where's labels? Labels right there. We want to show data points on the labels. And I can put them at the bottom. I can put them in the middle of the bar. I can put them at the top of the bar. I like them just outside the bar. Then the next thing I want to do is I'll close the labels tab. Going to go into number formatting right here, number formatting. This 18.7 and 20.9, 16.2, et cetera. These are all percentages. So in my number styling, I'm going to go into a suffix and add a percent. Bing, there's my percentage. Okay. I'm going to do something that's fairly esoteric here. When we have discrete data, obviously you can't have half of something. And so when we have discrete data where every single bar represents a different unique value, let's say we are counting credit hours like 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 credit hours. How many students in class have each of those? We want to maintain the bars as separate to indicate that the 12 credit hours and 13 credit hours are discrete and they don't touch. But whenever we have something that is continuous or near continuous, we want to represent that in the graph by getting rid of the spaces in between the bars. And this is going to be something that we discover, this is where I probably should have practiced this, but I believe it's in the bars command. And we've got spacing main. I bet you if I drop that down to 0, my spacing goes away. That's like super awesome. Okay, so I've got that. Let's see here. The next thing I want to do is I want to add a chart title, and that would be our header. And so that would be how many students were in your high school. All right, there's that. And again, I can center this. Centering isn't bad. I can write, we'll keep it centered. Now, the one thing I would, and I think I do this in Excel. There should be a way to custom override. I tend to like to, if I have everything equally spaced, and I have one that's a catch-all. A lot of times what I like to do is with that last bar, change the color of that bar. Now, I think I need, unfortunately, with Excel, I know exactly how to do this. With Flourish, I think I need some custom scripting to do that, and I'm not really sure what the custom scripting is. All right, but we'll go with what we have here because this is, people can read the labels and figure that out. All right, so now I'm moving my little Zoom screen. Now, once we have this done, we're ready to export and publish this. So export and publish. Again, we have the two options. If we're working with our final report as a deck in Canva, we can export this directly into that deck. And if we change anything in our data, the Canva deck will update with whatever we change here. And then finally, if we want to download image, we can hit the download image. All right. So that covers all of the basic chart types that we cover in, the second week of MS 264. I'm probably going to start doing, and then later in the class, we have some bivariate charts that we'll talk about when we get a little closer. I'm also going to probably start doing some additional just charts for the heck of the doing charts that are cool charts and adding those to this channel as well. But that's what I wanted to accomplish today. Have yourselves a wonderful afternoon.